Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my buddy read of the book Deadhouse Gates with my friend Caleb from Caleb Likes Books. The way we decided to do this video is that I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, and then Caleb's going to talk separately about the book, and then I'm going to finish out the video myself. And so you'll see Caleb later on in this video. But we decided to read Deadhouse Gates in the month of August. And I ended up reading it fairly early in August, and Caleb finished it right around the end of August. Or actually, he should say he didn't finish it, he DNF'd the book. And I powered through and I read the whole book. And so we each wanted to give our perspectives on it. Even though Caleb DNF'd the book, Caleb actually is somewhat positive about the book, and he'll explain why he DNF'd in his portion of the video. I finished the book, but I feel pretty negative about it. And I was willing to give this series a chance. I read the first book in the series about 3 years ago, Gardens of the Moon, and I did not really understand it. There were some cool moments in it, but as a whole, it just wasn't an enjoyable reading experience. I felt like it was like a chore to read through, and I didn't see the value in it for me. And so I put the series down for a long time. The only reason I picked it up was actually one of two reasons. One, because Caleb was planning to pick it up anyway, and I decided to do the buddy read with him. And the second reason was because one of our best friends named Alex decided to encourage us to read this because he's a big Malazan fan, and he's read through the whole series. And so I picked this up, and I felt exactly like I did about book one. I just couldn't get into it. There were some interesting characters and some interesting ideas in this book, but you would have an interesting scene that would be 5 or 10 pages, and then I would go like 50 to 100 pages where it felt like this book was super boring and nothing was happening. And then I'd have 5 or 10 pages that were really enjoyable. And then I'd have 50 to 100 pages where it felt like nothing was happening. And there were some characters that I really enjoyed, like Felicin Paran. I really liked the character of Felicin. I also really enjoyed seeing how everybody was starting to converge as the book continued on. And there were some mythos around certain characters that made it look like this one character was going to be doing this one, was going to fulfill this prophetic role. And so I was like, okay, we're going in this direction. And then all of a sudden, boom, it was this other character. I was like, that was a really cool misdirect. And one thing about the whole Malazan world is it feels so rich and lived in. The history is so in-depth. So I respect the work that Steven Erikson has gone into the world building. But you have to make your book enjoyable, and it just wasn't enjoyable for me. In fact, I completely just stopped reading for days on end, and then I'd pick it up and try. And it's not because the book's long. I've read some chunker books. I read the entire book, the 1,000-page book, Pillars of the Earth. I read it in 3 days because I loved it that much. I read the Rhythm of War in like 5 days, and I read it so fast because I loved it so much. And so it being a big book is not the problem. It has to be enjoyable. And Steven Erikson, a lot of people who've read his books know that he does not include exposition. And in some cases, that can be really cool. For example, in the TV show The West Wing, there are times where the show is incredibly ahead of the viewer and you have to catch up. And it works really well in the visual medium of The West Wing. And with Aaron Sorkin's dialogue, it works really well. It does not work out well in a book where you are having so many huge cast of characters, so many places. You've never met these characters before because, for those of you who don't know, in Deadhouse Gates, it's an entirely different setting than Gardens of the Moon. It's like 2 different series practically. And so there's I think one, if I'm remembering correctly, there was one character who is a crossover character. And let me see if I have the correct name of the character in my mind. Fiddler. I believe Fiddler is the only crossover to my knowledge. And so it's an entirely different book, and you don't understand what's happening, and it's all, oh, well, you just need to wait till a certain point. Well, that doesn't really work for me. And, compare this to, say, another big epic fantasy series coming from Tor Books that was big in the 2000s was The Wheel of Time. I love The Wheel of Time. I've read the whole Wheel of Time series. I felt from book one that I was invested, and Robert Jordan did was he slowly expanded the cast, slowly expanded the land, slowly expanded the characters, started adding more, started making it more complex. But I was hooked on the characters, and it was simple to understand, and so. Even though I know the Wheel of Time feels long for some people and doesn't work out, I feel like I can explain why the Wheel of Time works better for most people than, say, the Malazan series. And so I was willing to give it a chance because I know how much people love the series. And I watched some videos online of some book or YouTubers talk about why they love Malazan so much, and I just wanted to participate in that. But just the way that Steven Erikson writes is just antithetical to the way that I enjoy books. And so I do not believe I will be continuing on with the Malazan series for any really reason in the future. Maybe in 5 to 10 years, I'll feel interested in starting it again, and I'll probably try to read it all together and back to back some of the books. I might try that eventually. But as of right now, I have no intention of continuing on because I did not like the series. I'm gonna give it I'm gonna give the book a 3 out of 10. I just did not enjoy it, and I was so frustrated throughout the book. As I said, there were moments of interestingness, but the majority of the book was not interesting. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna hand it off to Caleb, who's gonna talk about why he liked the book, but why he DNF'd it.
Hello there, everyone. I am Caleb from Caleb Likes Books. Jonathan invited me to do this video with him to talk about Deadhouse Gates, the second book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. So thank you, Jonathan, for inviting me to do this video with him. We decided to do a buddy read of this book, which was very exciting. Although I started it after he finished it and took quite a while to actually get through the first half of it, which is all of this book that I read, because I actually decided to DNF this book, unfortunately. For some context, my thoughts on the first book in the series, I actually rather enjoyed it despite being kind of confused. You know, Malazan's known for being a series that is kind of difficult for a lot of people to get into because it kind of throws you in the deep end without a whole lot of exposition or explanation or anything like that. But despite that, I actually really enjoyed it. There was a lot of cool moments in Gardens of the Moon. Really enjoyed the writing style, really enjoyed just the scale and scope of it. Reading this series so far, I just get the sense that there's a lot to uncover and a lot going on. So I really enjoyed that about it. So going into Deadhouse Gates, I was fully expecting to feel very similarly. And I think that I did, but this one, for some reason, just did not grab my attention the same way as the first book did. And so I ended up DNFing it about halfway through. It was at the end of part 2 of the book, about 45% of the way through or so about halfway. But there were some things that I did enjoy about this overall. I really connected, I think, with the character Felicin, I believe is the name of the character, who is one of the primary point of view characters across the book, at least to the point that I got. And I really appreciated that character. I thought she was very interesting. She was kind of, with Malazan, even in the first book, there was 1 or 2 characters that I really kind of latched onto as the characters that really kept me anchored in the book. And this was that character for me in this one. So I was very compelled by her story. Unfortunately, there was not as much of her story in the first half of this book as I would have liked. If it had been more so following her perspective all the way through, I probably would have enjoyed this a bit more. But instead, it did the Malazan thing of jumping from one person to another all the time, which I guess has its own appeal for some people, but I would have preferred maybe something different. But I also really enjoyed a lot of moments throughout this book. There were, just a lot of moments throughout it that I really enjoyed. Same thing, like I said, with the first book, where it has things that happen that are really cool and stick in your mind. There's moments from the first book that are still, I remember vividly. And I expect that this book, even though I only read the first half, has several moments in it that are probably going to be the same way. So really good moments, really cool, like I said, the scale of it, the world building, it kind of goes over my head a lot of the time, but I did enjoy those aspects of it quite a bit. And also the writing style of Steven Erikson just has a lot of appeal to me. Again, kind of goes over my head a lot of the time just because it's so dense and full of stuff going on and full of characters and all kinds of things. But the writing style itself I also really enjoy. I really enjoy his prose quite a bit. But the main reason why I didn't finish this book comes down to two things, I think. The first thing is that I was just kind of starting to lose interest, which was, I think, due to the second reason, which is because it was just too much. I appreciate and I love the idea of the series of something big in scope and scale and ambition, and trying to do something like what this series seems to be. I really want to eventually have finished and hopefully love this series because I love the idea of it a lot. I love just the scale of it, like all of the stuff going on, telling this whole big tale about this world and things like that. I just think that's really cool. But because it has such a large scale and such a large scope and is doing so much and throwing so many things at you, it's just hard for me to keep track of all of it, and therefore kind of hard for it to hold my attention and my kind of interest, I guess. Even though I enjoyed a lot of what was going on at the time that I was, about ready to put it down, I probably would have given it like a 7, maybe an 8 out of 10 if you really pushed me. Probably closer to a 7. But so to me, that's like a positive score. So it's like I'm enjoying what's here. It's just really kind of going over my head a lot and difficult for me to keep track of. And this is a series that I think that I would probably enjoy maybe later on. This is one of those series where for me, I'm thinking I just need to take a break from it and come back to it at a later date. So even though I'm DNFing this book right now, it's not a forever DNF. It's not something that I'll never pick up again. I do hope to dive into this series again later on and hopefully come to it with a new sense of excitement and appreciation for what it does, because as it is, I enjoy what's here. I think that the ideas and just the concept of this series is really awesome. It's just that the books themselves are a bit too dense, a little too much for me to really wrap my head around. And I know everyone says, trust Erikson, he'll guide you through it, and I don't doubt that. But for me right now, it's just hard for me to kind of get really invested in the series for all of those reasons. So that's pretty much why I didn't finish this book. So I guess I will let Jonathan handle the rest of this.
Thank you so much to Caleb for participating in this video. It's great to bring in other perspectives, but maybe another time we'll have to bring in more people to talk about the Malazan series. We have our friend Alex who might come in one day to talk with us about this. But those are my thoughts and Caleb's thoughts on the Malazan book, Deadhouse Gates. If you've read this book, did you enjoy it, or did you struggle like I did, struggle like Caleb did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.